Next up, here we have a particular masterclass about the relationship we all have with social media, which is a very multifaceted and complex relationship. Now, a study was undertaken with the Women's Forum right here, as well as the Reboot Foundation, on these perceptions of social media and what they have. And next up, our speaker is going to be Helen from the Reboot Foundation, and she will be talking about the very crucial role that social media plays in all our lives. So once we have that stage ready, please do give a big round of applause to Helen from the Reboot Foundation. Round of applause, please. Thank you. And those who are attending some of the very diverse sessions that we're going to have on the discovery sessions, they will be starting a little bit later at 11:30. So please enjoy Helen's presentation. For those who want to go for discovery sessions, they start 11:30. Please look at your app on where they're taking place. Thanks a lot. I'll see you back here at 2.
That's fine. Okay. Good morning. My name is Helen Bouygues. I am a businesswoman specialized in restructuring and turnaround of large companies, but I'm also the proud founder of the Reboot Foundation that I started in 2018. It was established to elevate critical thinking and to promote richer, more reflective thought on all levels of society. But I'm here today to discuss with you the topic of the modern social media influencer, a profession that didn't even exist a few years ago. Social media influencing is a $10 billion industry, and it is dominated predominantly by women. 77% of influencers who are profiting off of the content are women, and across all age brackets, more women follow influencers than men do. Women influencers can charge 3 to 4 times more than men on content, but we know very little about this universe still. So the Women's Forum and the Reboot Foundation partnered on a project to try and answer questions around social media and influencers. Over several weeks, in September and October, we surveyed more than 3,000 women and teen girls in the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and Brazil. The survey also included more than 1,000 influencers, and they told us their perspectives on the business. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to do a small session with some of our young women leaders, and they actually did a portion of the survey as well, which I can give you the feedback later. So the Women's Forum and the Reboot Foundation, we wanted to know more about this emerging career path, and we wanted to better understand women's view and perspectives on influencing. How much influence do these social media personalities really have? How do women and teen girls in different countries view influencers? Is influencing a career that many women are interested in pursuing? And how much money do they actually even make? We compiled the results of this survey into a new report called To Like or Dislike: Women's Complex Relationship with Social Media Influencers. So I'm excited to be here to discuss with you our findings. I'd like to first start, though, with a short activity that will enable you to see how you compare with the women and teens that we surveyed. For this activity, you're going to need your cell phone, your laptop, or some kind of internet connection device. So go ahead and get your phones out. And because of the time constraint, we're not going to run you through the entire survey, but we pulled out 10 questions for you to answer. So it's just going to be 10 questions. If you see the QR code, that'll give you the cue as to do the survey, and we will do real time what this group says relative to what the 3,000 young women and women survey did in the 4 countries. So, if you're all ready, we will give for each question about 30 seconds for you to answer and click your responses. Let's begin. So the first question is about your frequency of social media use. Please go ahead and provide your input. Close, perfect. Okay. And the response? You couldn't vote. Oh, you could, AV, please? Can we do? We're going to relaunch this, I think. Oh, now it worked? Perfect. Okay. So now I'll just give you 15 seconds. I'm kidding. Aha. Okay, it looks like it's stabilized. So this group is actually either not really telling the truth or actually shorter users. In our survey, the average, 28% of women spent between 1 to 2 hours a day on social media, and 23% spent between 2 to 3 hours. As you know, the international average for teen women is more like 3 hours on social media, unfortunately. Next question, please. Next question, yes. So this is about the impact of social media on the quality of your life. So please go ahead and check all that apply. So you could actually be 100% for all of them. So this room actually appears to be quite similar to our 3,000 women average. In our survey, 79% instead of 76% said, I have learned a lot of various topics from my social media feeds. And 68% said that they waste a lot of time scrolling through social media feeds. But since you guys only spend about an hour, it's a little bit more efficient, I'm sure. Okay, the third question, please. So this is about the emotions you associate with social media use. Actually, it's a previous question? Okay, well, we'll skip the third question then. That's okay. So this is about how many influencers you follow. It's about 60-40. So our survey indicated that about 48% said that they follow some influencers. So this is a bit kind of around the mixed group. Next question, please. So this is about the emotions you associate with social media use. And again, please check all that apply, please. Wow, this moves a lot. It's like national elections. Okay. 50% of you said, 53% of you said satisfied. But over 40% of you are saying exhausted and anxious. Our group actually had the number one answer was smart, and for you it's on the bottom of the list at 16%. Okay, but anxious and exhausted were on top of as well, and satisfied was around about 40% for our group. But exhausted and anxious are common themes that we see across the board. So we still do it even though it makes us tired and makes us anxious. Next question, please. how much trust in the content do you have of social media? "35% hardly trust." Our survey had 36% hardly trust. And not trusting at all, you guys are at 13%, while the survey group was at 22%. So somewhat similar as well, but with variances. The next question, please. This is about how much respect you have for influencers. So this group has a lot more respect for influencers than our survey, because our survey, some respect was at 39%, and 37 said not much or no respect. Next question, please. Now it's about talking about influencing as a career. If money was no object, would you be a social media influencer? My guess is this group is a little bit biased, but we'll see. No, still moving. Actually, this group is not that far from the survey. 63% of the women that we surveyed said that they were not interested in influencing, versus our 60%. We have 3 more questions left. The next question, please. What is the impact of influencers you follow, and what kind of impact do they have on your opinion and beliefs? It looks like it's stabilized, and because obviously in this audience you guys are all so well dressed and so beautiful, you need to be less influenced, because this number is significantly different from the survey that we did. 62% of the women in our survey said that influencers were very or moderately important when it came to fashion and beauty, whereas this group, it's a little over 40%. So there's about 20% difference, which is very significant. Next question, please. The second to the last question. This is if you imagined a world without any influencers. And again, you can check all that apply. So bored was 20% for this group, just as it was for a survey group. Happy was 21%, and 21% good about myself, which you guys couldn't do because it wasn't an option. Okay. Our last question, please. So this is a question asking about your opinion on the impact of influencers can have on the self-esteem of women and girls. Wow. So over 90%, 93% of this group believes that it has a negative impact on self-esteem of girls in this room. 80% of the women in our survey either agreed or strongly agreed that influencers have a negative effect on women. Thank you for participating in this survey. So this is kind of free serving for the Reboot Foundation. No, I'm kidding. All joking aside, it's always very interesting to see how different groups react to different surveys. Now, for the AV people, if we can move on to my slides, please. So as I was kind of giving you feedback real time, there were differences, but overarchingly, there were commonalities between the women in this room and the survey of the women across the 4 countries that we did. Although, as I will mention in my speech, there are differences between younger women and older women in terms of some of the perceptions as well. Again, surveys produce a lot of statistical data, and a lot of it is quite useful. But the real interesting thing is about the findings and what are the takeaways of these surveys that I think is more important that I want to share with you. Our first finding is that indeed teen girls do have an unhealthy relationship with social media influencers that they follow online. By large margins, teens are more likely to follow influencers, to trust their endorsements and recommendations, which is very distinct from how adult women view and interact with influencers. There's been quite a bit of research on this in the past couple of years on the effect social media has on the self-esteem of young girls and their body image. Globally, researchers are finding that social media has measurable impact and consequential effects, negative effects, on teens, especially girls. And the girls in our survey know this. 3 out of 4 girls that we surveyed, agree that social media could be harmful to them. More than half and up to 85% agree that social media is a waste of time. And yet, 60% of them felt a positive connection to the personalities that they follow, even though there is no real-life interaction of personal relationship with these influencers. The girls are attached to influencers. These connections are what psychologists call parasocial, meaning they're one-sided attachments. Girls are attached to the influencer, but the influencers are not attached to the girls. I understand that teens have swooned over celebrities for as long as they exist, but today there is a bit of a difference from just being fans of celebrities, because this relationship is not as innocent as they used to be. The influencer-follower paradigm is a business model. It is structured and optimized to make money for corporations and for the influencers at the expense of the follower. Young women trust influencer endorsements, 44% in France, 59% 59% in Brazil with the UK, and the US in between, and also purchase products thanks to these endorsements. Girls interviewed generally universally felt bored if social media did not have content from influencers. Now, I said a moment ago that girls are attached to the influencer, but influencers are not attached to the girls. What do I mean by this? To put it bluntly, a good number of influencers we surveyed do not care about the well-being of the teenage followers. How do we know this? Because we asked them. Our survey included more than 1,000 influencers, and we put it to them directly. If you knew that the content you post causes your followers to feel bad about themselves, would you still be active as a social media influencer? Would it surprise you to learn that 1 out of 3 influencers said that they would continue posting? American influencers were even more callous, 42% that they would continue their work. This is exactly like cigarette companies pushing ads. So this has to be a real wake-up call for every parent and for anyone who knows or cares about a girl who spends too much time on social media. We need to help them understand the power imbalance in the influencer-follower relationship. They must understand that this can lead them to making poor choices and having unhealthy feelings about themselves. This is why the Reboot Foundation has supported efforts in France and in the US to place new restrictions and regulations on social media use for teens. We've advised politicians and leaders and governments to have a ban on digital advertising aimed at teens. We believe that social media apps should come with warning labels, as we see on tobacco products, and that teens younger than 15 should actually not even be allowed on social media. I know that seems a little bit optimistic, but it's something that needs to be put into consideration, as it is currently in a lot of countries. But I am hopeful that these girls will grow and become, as they grow and become older, that perhaps their attachment to influencers will fade over time. We saw some of this in the data. Older women were much less likely to follow influencers, to respect influencers, and to listen to influencers than were teens. Trust by older women were halved compared to girls in the UK and France, and significantly lower for the US as well. But that doesn't mean that older women don't have issues with social media. Indeed, they do. And this leads me to another key finding from our research. Many older women just can't quit their influencers. We saw several conflicting responses from the women we surveyed. I would describe it as a love-hate relationship that women seem to have with social media. On the one hand, they told us that they want less content from influencers in their feed. Over half of the people said this, that they said they would feel happy or good about themselves if their feeds contain no content from influencers. But on the other hand, almost every woman we surveyed do follow influencers. They say that they don't have much respect for influencers. Less than 12% said that they have respect. And if you take out Brazil, it's more like 5%. Women were consistent that social media was largely a waste of time. Between 67 and 85% of women in France, UK, and the US, with the exception of Brazil, where less than half of them thought this was true. Brazil is interesting because it is clearly a country that's an outlier in usage and appreciation. Overall, women in Brazil spend far more time on social media than women in other countries. 47% are what we would deem heavy users, meaning they spend more than 3 hours a day on social media. The next closest country was the US at 31%. But if you look even closer at the data, you'll see that 27% of the women in Brazil told us that they spend at least 5 hours a day on social media. I mean, where do they find the time? So whilst in general, older women, one, don't have much respect for influencers, feel that social media is a waste of time, and don't trust influencers as much as the girls, why are we consuming so much of it? upwards of 60% of the women acknowledge that social media personalities have at least a moderate amount of influence on their opinions when it comes to beauty, fashion, health, and other similar issues. How does one hold disdain for a profession while simultaneously devouring what they're serving? To me, these results are very similar to another report that the Reboot Foundation published in the summer of 2021, where 40% of social media users said that they would pick social media over their TV, cars, and even their pets if they had to choose. So goodbye, little doggy or cat in their household. So social media is really exactly like an addiction, like smoking. You know it's bad for you, but you keep doing it anyway. And I think this is why our survey data shows this love-hate relationship that many women have with social media. They acknowledge it makes them feel bad. They admit it's largely a waste of time, but they keep scrolling, following, liking, and subscribing, searching for that next hit of dopamine. Now, onto the influencers and influencing as a career. Another key finding, influencing is not a great career path, yet significant number of teens worldwide want to pursue it. The percentage of teens and young women who expressed interest in becoming influencers varied from country to country, but overall, it was an overwhelming number. Interest was again strongest in Brazil, where 51% of teen girls say were interested in becoming social media influencers if money was no object. In the US, 42%, France, 21%, and the UK, 34%. I repeat, 50%, or even 21%. Can you imagine if these percentages were for professions like in the sciences? One reason is that girls are seeing influencing as a lucrative career when in fact it is not. Both teens and adults in our surveys overestimated the potential income that influencing can yield. 63% of teens and more than 70% of women said they believe that influencers make enough money to support themselves. Well, it isn't, at least not for most influencers. And while it is true that there are certainly the occasional and optional influencers that make considerable sums of money, those people are in the minority. The vast majority of the influencers who took our survey, about 8 out of 10, said that they're unable to support themselves through influencing. In fact, the money's not there, and most influencers are unable to do it full time. Then there's a mental toll of working in an industry that few people respect. Only 17% of the influencers said that they feel a lot of respect from others of the work they do. So to sum it all up, for the vast majority of girls, the money won't be there, and if you do make it, few will respect your choice. This is not really a winning formula for a long-term career. And yet, so many women would pursue it given the chance. So as a society, we need to ask ourselves why that is. What messages are we sending our daughters that make them think this is worthy of their time and talents? One last thing on this topic, and I think it's really important to note, young women who do pursue influencing can expect to be harassed. Influencers report online harassments at much higher rates than others. Across all the countries we surveyed, influencers experienced harassment twice as often as a typical female social media user. And even more unfortunately, here's something that I found truly frightening. Roughly 1 in 4 influencers, 26%, said they've experienced online harassment that then spilled over into real life. That's a real, very element in danger. The idea that young women have, that they can keep their online lives separate from their in-person lives, is just not accurate. As a woman, that's scary. I've covered a lot of ground this morning and thrown out a lot of numbers at you. But as final words, I would like to leave you with some thoughts on what we can do about this as mothers, business leaders, educators, and people who want to open doors for young girls and create a more equal and just society. I started the Reboot Foundation to elevate critical thinking and promote richer, more reflective thoughts at all levels of society. And I believe that an important way to help teens better understand influencing is to teach them, 1, how to become critical thinkers, and 2, have stronger media literacy skills. We must teach our daughters how to think logically, how to analyze, how to think for themselves, and effectively evaluate sources of information, how to be skeptical about what they see and what they read online, how to spot when they're being manipulated from an influencing industry whose only objective is to profit from us. And if we can teach our daughters how to think, really think critically about the world around them, then at least we'll have given them the best tools to survive in this jungle of social media. Thank you.